what I'm presenting today is the findings of a pilot study, and the title of the presentation is Cast of NadeNade Events, an initial ethnographic exploration. I will explain who are cast, what is NadeNade, and what is going on a little bit later. So, NadeNade is basically virtual head patting. As you will see in this video, you'll have a user who will start to pat another person, and you will see what it provides as visual communication. So it's a phenomenon that is super popular in the Japanese sphere of VRChat. And more specifically, it can happen like public worlds, but then there's also a lot of events, organized events. And by organized events, I mean they're created by one or multiple users with a designated world, rules, schedule, theme, people working there, although without earning any money. So it's voluntary activity. They have to pass sometimes exams. They also they have to kind of fight for the spot to be a cast, let's say, at an event. So at first glance, head patting may seem like a simple interaction. However, as I will introduce in this presentation, it has developed into a quite sophisticated form of visual communication and is deeply intertwined with intimacy, emotional support, and community culture. Head patting in the Japanese sphere of VRChat is claimed to produce healing and relaxation, so it's a quite complex phenomenon. So, like I said, in VRChat specifically, users, they claim that patting another person on the head or being patted by someone on the head can reduce psychological distance between users. It is also an act that once conducted with consent fosters intimacy and friendship, and VRChat tends to enable such feelings of closeness more easily than in real life. In fact, users explain that such forms of contact are rare in the physical world, but are quite common for them in VRChat. They are rare because, according to Virtual Girl Name and other users, it's that outside of intimate relationships or memories from childhood, as adults, users rarely experience being hugged or patted on the head. Here we have to understand that this is said by Japanese users regarding Japanese culture and Japanese context. So I have been observing the practice of NadeNade head patting since 2020, when I first started VRChat. And then as of 2025, NadeNade has been regarded as a central element of VRChat culture. It is performed in different ways and in different spaces. Users provide petting at events to customers who are lucky enough to win lottery. They practice movements at training worlds and training events. They also attend lectures and exchange meetings in VRChat. Users also mingle with one another in designated petting matching worlds or connect to an NPC, so non-playable character petting world, where such characters pet them. Petting is also done outside of dedicated spaces, such as among friends or partners or lovers. To provide an immersive experience, users buy specific petting gimmicks on Booth, which is a Japanese website where you can buy like avatars, clothes, gimmicks, and also non-VRChat related stuff. And I've noticed that like the first gimmick that was specifically sold on the platform for petting was in 2018. So this practice has been part of the VRChat culture for quite some time, and almost since the beginning of VRChat. And users also write and film tutorials about how to practice petting. They give lectures. So in summary, the NadeNade culture is quite rich and it's very socially active. The events, they're happening like several times per day, several times per week. There's a lot that's going on. But however, the topic of NadeNade has been scarcely studied academically. So when I looked for terms such as NadeNade written in Japanese and NadeNade in English, or skinship on platforms such as Google Scholar, GStage, and other academic spaces, I found almost no results. So this pilot study addresses this gap by focusing on cast members. So cast are people who are designated at events to take care of guests. They're not designated every time, they're designated by the owner or organizer of the event, either at the beginning of the event or through reoccurring, let's say, cast calls, to be present every, let's say, Wednesday from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. to take care of one or multiple customers. And the majority of the time, the majority of the events that I've observed, it is always the cast who pets the customer. There has been only 2 events where the customer petted the cast. So I want to briefly mention about my methods. So this study is an exploratory ethnography conducted over 4 months, from May 21st to September 21st, 2025. During this period, I participated in 26 petting events, engaged in 19 one-to-one petting sessions, so there was me and 1 cast. Observed the group activities and public X, or formerly Twitter profiles, analyzed community blogs, training materials, impressions posted by customers. I also conducted a survey among 31 cast members. And alongside, I ended up becoming a staff and also a cast at petting events. I work twice a week. So due to personal limitations, my participation primarily took place in healing type events, which are the majority of petting events that are available as of now and of this year. But there's a minority of events which are called more icha, so it's more like flirting, and there's more sexual, let's say, interactions, whereas the ones that I attended, healing type, it's only focusing on petting the head, right? Without any kissing sounds, without any licking sounds, without all of those things. And yeah, the majority of the events that I attended, there were the cast that was petting the customer. Here you can actually see me on the right with the white and black hair petting a customer. It's a photo we took together at the end of the session. So here I'm showing you a video of an event that demonstrated the overall proceedings and interactions that take place, from like how you get in and everything. So while the video plays, I want to begin discussing the external influences that structure cast activities, because they're not free, you know, to look as they like, to do what they want. There's a certain structure and there's certain rules. So events are held regularly, with some weekly or bi-weekly or once a month. They take place around 9 to 10 p.m. Japanese time, with some happening on Monday, then picking up the rhythm on Wednesday, and with most of the events happening on Friday and Saturday. This rhythm is guided by Japanese work schedule, as the majority of the cast work, so they get off the work around 6, 7 p.m., the time they get home, eat dinner, and then they engage in such activities. And the reason why the majority of the events are towards the end of the week is because, since it's soon like the weekend, they say they can stay up late a little bit easier than if it was Monday. So social interactions has through clearly defined rules. For example, sending friend requests or visiting private worlds is generally prohibited with the cast. And cast members are encouraged to maintain a boundary in the cast-guest relationship. Communication is also temporally structured, beginning with an introduction of rules in an entrance-like space, then moving to a private room with a cast that extends into an icebreaker and a petting session, and finishing with a photo and sometimes an after time. The petting style can be decided together with the customer or can be set by the event. For example, certain events specialize in mirror petting or in love petting. The video that I'm showing now is an event that specializes in mirror petting, so the cast pets the user in front of the mirror. And during events, cast members have the responsibility to provide the best possible experience, even if they dislike the guest's avatar. Because it should be noted that cast rarely can choose the customer. The customer would be either assigned randomly, could be designated by the customers, they can choose the cast, or will be chosen through lottery. So but even if they don't like the appearance, let's say, of the guest, they still have to provide the best experience, right? So to provide such experiences, cast members attune their movements to the observed guest's reactions, trying to elicit positive responses and avoiding letting petting become boring. As such, cast explain that they avoid actions performed solely for self-indulgence and ego gratification, as well as types of petting that guests do not like. Given that events require hardware and software, I have to mention technological regulations that could limit access to petting events. The majority of observed events were attended mostly by PC VR users, with standalone Quest users being quite rare. Due to that, only a handful of events have worlds and cast avatars that are compatible with Quest users. Indeed, if the avatar is not compatible, the Quest user will see an imposter avatar, and cast have explained that it is disturbing to be petted by such avatars. Thus, cast members must adopt avatars that suit the technical environments of the events. However, this also means that users with quests have fewer options to become casts or to attend events. And given that quest costs less than PC VR, we can also wonder to what extent the practice is economically inclusive. Specifically, since we know that in the recent research I did with them, that about a third of the users identify as being low income. So on the subject of technology potentially influencing avatar appearance, I want to briefly mention how the event themes can also influence user appearances, the cast appearances. So overall, the cast are more or less free to choose their outfits and avatar models, and however, there are some rules to be followed, right? For example, some events require specific avatar sizes, that is less than, let's say, 50 megabytes, height around 1 meter, and specific clothing. So in events that would focus, let's say, more on flirting, cast members may be asked to wear underwear-like outfits, while events with a traditional, let's say, ryokan, which is traditional Japanese in, then they will be wearing, let's say, kimono kind of inspired outfits, right? Conversely, due to world design constraints, some events restrict the use of particle-based accessories. For example, if your particles making little lights, it might be bothering in a world and an event which is specializes into petting with the purpose of putting the other person to sleep, because the light, the light from the particles, it might bother them. There are also certain events that ask the cast to use specific avatar models, because the event focuses on providing experience from cast with that specific model. There's also events where all the cast must have masculine or feminine avatars. Of course, the gender or sex of the user is not important in that scenario. A user can be female and use a masculine avatar, or vice versa. The importance is how the appearance of the avatar. The choice of avatar is actually quite important because it might influence the behavior. So, for example, Cass explained that if you use, let's say, a little like chibi or small type of avatar, your movements would look a little bit more childish, or you will try to emulate that kind of style. Whereas if, let's say, your avatar has the traditional Japanese trope of older sister, your movements will be maybe a little bit more refined or a little bit more caring. So, likewise, if the user uses an avatar that has the kind of like mother appearance, right? They will also engage in petting. Let's say they will be maybe not sensual, but more caring. And that is also the petting style must match, according to cast, to your avatar appearance and then your clothes. The whole atmosphere must be coherent and go with the event, right? So on this slide, you can see, so you can see my new avatar on the left top corner. Then you see the blonde-haired elf avatar. That was me. So you can see the photos I took at the event at the end of the events with cast, and basically the cast identity follows general VRChat trends in identity, such as the majority being in their 20s and 30s, and the majority being male users who use feminine avatars. There are also cast members who use masculine avatars, as well as female users who use masculine avatars. However, they are a minority, and these trends generally reflect the overall kind of VRChat identity trends. The reason why feminine avatars are more, let's say, popular is because the events, their purpose is to attract customers, and the majority of customers are male users. So they say the best way to attract them is also through feminine avatar appearances, no matter the gender or the sex of the user behind. And on the other hand, for example, masculine avatars have been said to be more popular amongst female guests, right? Who are unfortunately a minority within this culture. And so the events that only have masculine avatars are also a minority within this culture. So during the survey, Casa explained that feminine avatars are also favored because they evoke impressions such as ease of petting, cuteness, kindness, and healing. They also make the cast members feel cute, lowering psychological barriers for performing petting. Once again, echoing this hegemonic and heterosexual tropes of femininity being associated with, care and all of that, which is once again reproduced here. Masculine avatars, due to their larger hands, because the hand size of masculine avatars tended to be bigger than that of the feminine avatars, were said to be suited to give a sense of being enveloped and cuddled. But however, because also the feminine avatars are the most common, the cast have explicitly made it clear that they feel pressure to stand out because there's so many people with the same type of avatar, right? And they also felt the pressure to have to use a feminine avatar, although they would prefer to use a masculine one. But because the first one is more popular, they felt that they had to choose it. So regarding outside influences that impact caste spreading practices, we can say that a combination of social factors, technological constraint, hospitality, expectations, and internal norms and cultural trends shape the behavior and social interactions. Caste must balance blending into the event's atmosphere while still expressing their individuality and standing out. While rules can be and can become disadvantages, cast members seem to choose events that align with their own interests and hobbies. Since it's a voluntary activity, cast choose where they want to work. They're not forced to do so. So at observed events, cast members aim to provide a feeling of safety, healing, and affirmation, allowing guests to release stress and fatigue through the act of petting. This is achieved by petting the head, so above the neck. The experience is symbolic, conducted mainly through visual and auditory cues, as there is no haptic feedback. To provide healing through touch, cats learn different petting techniques. They take time and energy to practice for months, even sometimes years, actually continuing to practice even after having become cast during training events or in training worlds, gatherings with friends or partners. Some continue to read blogs written by renowned petting practitioners in the community or purchase their their videos. So in this section, I want to look at several fundamental elements that make up the petting kata, so the petting, let's say, basics of the movements, such as the position, the distance, and the speed. So regarding of the position, see on the left, there's a famous petting practitioner who is, and this video is a course that he actually also gives in VRChat. So regarding the position, petting can take place in various spaces. So mirror petting, as I've shown before, face-to-face, as you can see here, with guests' head resting on the cast lap. In face-to-face or lap position, the cast member directly faces the guest, who sees the cast member's expression and movements through the viewfinder. Here, as in lap petting, where the avatar symbolically rests on the cast knees, cast members pat the user's viewfinder. The video demonstrates Chad's typical example. In mirror petting, the guest observes their own reflection when receiving patting. So, like we saw in the first video, the cast will be behind the customer and both will be in front of the mirror. So in this case, attention is less about the viewfinder, so what the user sees, and more the reflection that they perceive. So according to cast members, understanding, so where's the viewfinder, what can they pat? Because if they, for example, touch the chin in face-to-face petting, the customer will not see the hand movement. So understanding where it is, what is the process of petting is quite important in creating a healing experience. So cast members also adjust the distance between their avatar and the user depending on the event type and petting style. For example, certain events allow close proximity between the cast and the customer, while others maintain greater distance. However, the distance of the hand from the face is also important. Cast explained that a distant hand creates anticipation, whereas a close hand to the face evokes the petting itself. A hand close to the viewfinder can also use to block vision. For example, partially blocking the user's view directs attention to the other area that is being petted. And for example, the shadow that is produced by the hand, it's a gimmick that cast use, it can provide kind of depth in the movement. The hand position itself and the angle of the wrist can provide with different sensations. In the presented video, we can see variations in the hand angle as well as how the cast moves their body. And petting, although is mostly done with your hand, it also involves moving your full body, your arm, and your elbow. Speed is also quite an important variable. So slow movements, they can provide relaxation, whereas faster movements create stimulation. They have to also vary speed depending, for example, type of an event. If the purpose of the event is to put the user to sleep, they will prefer to pad in a very slow manner. If the purpose is to do a performance, like for example, as you see in here, there will be greater variations in speed. Speed is also used to avoid monotony because padding with the same speed kind of is perceived to be rather boring. So you have to play around like if you were, making a music with different rhythms. The facial expressions are also quite important alongside gimmicks. So, for example, Cass mentioned that you have to, pay attention to having your eyes open or sometimes smiling, or using different gimmicks. Like here, for example, the cast is using the breath gimmick, so to provide, to make it a little bit more interesting, the experience. They also sometimes use sound gimmicks such as ASMR sounds. So when the cast is touching the customer's head, the customer hears kind of ASMR type of how can I say it, kind of describe it, like type of sound if you were caressing a cloth or something like that. It makes that type of sound. Although there's also like massage oil sounds, and there's a variety of different types. But all of that is used to create a kind of an interesting experience, so that the user is not bored during the 30 minutes that they are being patted. So what are the motivations to do so? Because the cast, they work. The majority of the users, they work during the day. They finish working, then they connect to become a cast. You have to connect like 30 minutes before the event. You have to stay a little bit longer after the event. So let's say on average you spend between 1 and 3 hours for that specific event. And when you're doing the events, you can't participate, in other activities. So I was quite interested to know what would they engage in such work, specifically knowing that they don't get they're not paid for it, right? So cast members, they emphasize the significant benefits of their work. The most commonly called benefit is personal satisfaction, expressed through feelings of accomplishment, recognition, enrichment of daily life, praise, self-expression, and a sense of being relied on by others. Cast members also have stated that the activity contributes positively to their mental health. According to the survey, cast members seem to seek social connection and community, as they would want to become part of this healing-themed petting world. The motivations also included things like wanting to increase visibility or believing that the cast members are the most important presence in the petting community. However, working as a cast member also brings challenges associated with popularity. They point out the importance of clearly distinguishing between in-event behavior and out-event behavior, yet this seems quite difficult in practice. Even outside events, so different VRChat worlds, cast members are recognized for being casts, and they are sought specifically to be petted, and they're expected to act as they act during events. So when people would come up to them, they would be like, "Oh, can you please pet me?" rather than engaging in any other interaction. And it's something that kind of pursues them even outside of the activities. And it also makes it difficult to engage in more private interactions, because then everything they do is seen as, oh, the cast of that event said this, rather than just the user themselves, right? Another something that can be of an issue is the interactions with organizers or with other casts that sometimes can go, not very smoothly. But at the same time, the cast also make friends, with other cast members and sometimes with the users from the events. They interact in friends plus training worlds, participate in petting events, petting sessions. They share techniques, spend time together, and celebrate achievements. There's also those interactions centered often surrounding training, petting, and petting styles. They also improve the stamina to pet during the events, which is quite interesting. And what is also important to note is that the cast members, they can also attend events as guests. And actually observing other cast members, gaining experience, understanding the sensation provided, or supporting friends is quite important for them. Because certain events require for the cast, before becoming a cast, to test out the event by being a customer. Sometimes they ask for the person to do that several times, to attend, to in order to get the idea of the atmosphere, what is going on, how is everything happening. So for them, becoming a cast is actually a transition from the one receiving petting to then the one giving petting. So through the social practice of basically petting, cast members benefit from their volunteer work, refining their techniques, building network and communities, fulfilling their personal interest in petting, and providing guests with a comfortable, pleasant experience. So in conclusion, NadeNade is not a simple imitation of real life, head petting. You cannot pet like you would pet another person or even a cat. Instead, it is a practice that requires imagination and creativity. This mediated form of communication follows intricate cultural norms, community practices and rituals, technological constraints, techniques, and it is mediated by design of VRChat itself. It transforms a familiar gesture into a new mode of social interaction that is emotionally rich. So thank you for your attention. A huge thank you to all the cast members and event organizers who helped me with this pilot study, who I've mentioned in the bottom of the slide, because without their help, this would not have been possible.